The Conversation Part 2.
I think part of the issue with why Lestat has such a visceral reaction to Louis eating animals is partly about denying himself, his new self as a vampire. When Lestat does give him the big speech at the end of episode 1, he's like, be all the things that you are, and like be them out loud and be proud in it. And he's like, and all the things that you'll become. And so when you become a vampire, he also wants him to be out and proud and loud about his vampire nature of, we need to feed, we're hunters, we're predators. And he's like, you're rejecting it, you're saying you don't like it, you find it immoral, you find it like lowbrow, but that's very close to who Lestat is and how he feels about himself. So he's like, if you feel that way now, does that mean that you also feel that same way about me? And like, if you're rejecting that in yourself, are you eventually gonna like start hating me for it, the way that you seem to hate yourself for the need to feed on people? And so I do understand a lot of Lestat's like insecurities and how he tries to cover up his insecurities by being even more outlandish and doing the next crazy thing. And just, it depends on the day. I'm very much like Louis, because sometimes I feel like Daniel, the way that Daniel sees Lestat, and he's just like, okay, this guy who's abusive and manipulates you, and he's no good, and he's extremely toxic, and the cycles of abuse. And then also, and Louis can sometimes be like, yeah, I agree with you, Daniel, that's him, but also he's like, now hold on, that is my husband you're talking about. I will defend him because he had a very hard childhood or something. And it's like, I feel like I'm like that with Lestat. And like, I see what you did, I can condemn you for it, but also I see why you did it. And I'm like, doesn't mean that you don't deserve the punishment that you get, because he did. He earned it.
Absolutely.
And he asked for it.
I think that's what makes the writing so good, is that we see this parallel between Daniel and the audience. Daniel is kind of our voice. He's speaking for us, and oddly so, he is the human in the situation for now. But we're not
for now.
He is the human, and so he's seeing things the way that we are seeing them. But when you also get to Louis' point of view, which we had, and you get to Claudia's point of view, which we had, it does make you question things, because it's like, yeah, what you're saying is true, but it's like, is it really that black and white? You know, this isn't a human, this is a vampire who's trying desperately, to just enjoy life, and also he's trying to restrain his power. Like, he's not even, showing what he could be doing. And what I love about Sam Reed is that he really does understand his character, and he says that the thing about Lestat is that the damage that he does do is most likely the least amount of damage that he can do. And we also, and in a way, Lestat is kind of a little bit justified, because we see that with Louis and his family when he almost hurts the twins, and he comes up with the presents and the gifts, and it's like, he didn't try to do that. He loves his family. He would never do anything to hurt any of them, but he still did, because he is very powerful, and he can. Paul's father put him in this crazy home, and Louis is the first one to say no. Even when his sister mentions it, she's like, we can put him in the crazy home, and Louis is like, no. So I think that even though, yes, like Louis said, he can be, a lot, but when he was in his right mind, he wasn't a burden. Like, he loved Paul, and just like I believe he would have taken care of Paul for the rest of his life if he had the chance. And then you have Claudia, who is a child vampire who can take care of herself, but in the sense, she's going to always need protection, because she is weak as a vampire. And vampires are not known to being rational. They're people who will do evil things to you. So it's like, even though she can take care of herself in a sense, she's still physically weak. So we see these parallels between Claudia and Paul, where Louis is a person who loves to take care of people. So the fact that he'll never be able to have a family of his own in a normal sense, who can I create? Who can I have in my life that I'll be able to take care of for the rest of my life? And they can't leave me and they won't leave me. Thus, we have a child vampire.
Like, it's very easy to see the parallels between Claudia and Grace, seeing how especially when Claudia leaves after her 7 years and she comes back and she's more mature and she's like, Louis needed a sister, especially when especially when Grace literally is like, oh, Louis, you're kind of dead to me and my family. Here's your tombstone. Gotta go to Boston. Bye. And I was like, it broke my heart. And I was like, dang. But there are a lot, and I love Paul. I'll just say that. I love Paul. I love his hateful, judgmental, homophobic little self. I'm like, you know what, Paul? He can get away with a lot of that, what he does. And I see why Louis is like, yeah, he's a handful, but I love him. And that is my brother, and he's like the brightest thing in my life. And I love the fact that Paul is also very open and honest with Louis. He has no filter.
That's good yawn.
Are you one with Christ, Mr. Leon?
How about you shut your damn mouth?
He feels like Lestat's the devil. He's going to tell you, and he feels like Grace shouldn't marry Levy because he's a Baptist. He's going to tell you at the kitchen table. And that's kind of what Claudia does. She's like, I will tell you exactly what I think. I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel, not only to your face, but like in front of the person that usually this is the person who would talk behind their back. You wouldn't really say this to their face. You would gossip about them behind their backs. Claudia and Paul are like, no, we can all sit at the same table and I'll look you in the eye and I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. And it brings out a different side to Louis, a different side that we see from like his other interactions, even with Grace or Miss Lily or Tom or anybody else in the show. He gets an honesty, he gets a groundedness that also reminds me a lot of Daniel, because Daniel is also going to say the quiet part out loud. He's going to say it to your face, and provocation, he doesn't have a problem with it. And I think Louis does need that in his life. Another reality check, come back down to earth, literally, because Lestat has us floating, and you can get lost in Lestat's world kind of easy. You need someone to be like, come back down here. The fact that he froze the room, Louis, that's weird. That's crazy. And he didn't do it because he's French, which is Louis' favorite line. Oh, he's different. He's French. Since when can the French stop time, Louis? When can they fly? What is Napoleon Bonaparte doing?
Up. But what I wanted to talk about was this character, Claudia. Now, what I love about Claudia is that so many people have different opinions of her. Mostly people are either talking about, how she's protective or not protective. For me, I don't think that Claudia is this innocent angel. I'm sorry. You guys are not going to like me on this. I'm going to keep it real. I don't. And I think that because she is a child, and we also got to see her kind of come from, being the 14-year-old that she is, to changing mentally, but not being able to change physically. So I think because of how her character is so tragic in the show, that we feel sympathy for her. And also when you actually look and you kind of just look at her from that side of her, in a sense, she is a victim of both of them, not just Lestat, but Louis too, because Lestat would have never chosen to do this to her. But we know that he only did it because Louis wanted him to. But if we look at Claudia and her backstory, she tells us that in her diaries, that her aunt used to beat on her. Her uncle was a pervert. So her mom is gone. so in a sense, the love that she feels from Louis is probably the only love that she's ever had besides her and Charlie. You know, and so if you look at her perspective through that way, that's even more sympathy, because she did not, and you mentioned this before when me and you talked, she did not have a good human life, but she also had a horrible vampire life as well, except for those, you know, couple of years where they were, you know, trying to make it work. But I also kind of think that her anger, it is justified, but at the same time, she blamed them for Charlie's death. He was already dead. They couldn't have changed him, even if they wanted to. We know that wasn't going to. And we can talk about Louis as well, because I don't think that Louis would have wanted to either. Even though I know he loves Claudia, the whole purpose of Claudia is for Louis. I don't think that it's just Lestat. I think it's also Louis. I don't think that Louis would be like, yeah, let's bring someone else. I mean, he even said it. So, you know, how you figure that was gonna go. Yeah. So it's like, you know, she went from being unloved, broke, poor, to getting love from Louis, to being rich, but she also lost her humanity and what she thinks is important, which was also having someone who would love her, you know. And she's like, hold up, I lost my humanity, but also I don't have someone who I have that could love me in the way that you guys are being loved. So I just didn't just lose my humanity, but I lost the opportunity to become a woman.
Absolutely. I say it wherever I am, but like, Claudia to me is my child. She is my daughter. I am biased. I am very biased. I'll be the first one to tell you, but also it does not mean I'm going to overlook her faults, because she has many. And Claudia is a miniature Lestat. And so, like, I can't have sympathy for Claudia and not have that same sympathy for Lestat. Lestat, it might have taken him 200 years to get to the point that he got to, but it took Claudia like 36 years to get to the point that Lestat is at right now. And I'm like, everything is tragic, everything hurts, everything is bad for Claudia. True for a lot of it. But she does play the two off of each other. She is very biased in her anger. When she is like, oh, I hate you both, but comes back to Louis and is like, well, I can actually never really hate you. I love you. But that Lestat, he's got to go. And I'm like, wait, girl, what?
Yeah.
What?
She said, I can't live without you. I thought I did. I thought I could.
And I'm like, it is a struggle. And it's like, I do not blame Lestat for turning Claudia. If I had to pick someone to put the blame on, I would give it more to Louis than I would to Lestat.
I think that we ignore the manipulation of Louis, and we ignore the manipulation of Claudia. Like, for instance, her in the lovemaking scene. And even though it was, you know, numb and disassociated, you know, because Louis and Lestat are not in a good place, it was completely wrong for her to do that. It was very disturbing to me, and I felt like it showed how manipulative she really is. And it also begs the question, you know, it's like, what is your motive really? Because we know that you want to take Louis from Lestat, absolutely, but it's like, if you're willing to go this far to get the love that you feel like you never had, it's like, how much more would you do? It makes you question her, and it's like, she has no business doing that too. And in a sense, it's really bad, because it's like, it's one thing for Lestat to go out and cheat. It's another thing to have another thing in my bed, another person in my bed, without me even knowing that they're there.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think that her and Lestat are the same person. They're just having to do things in a different means.
I do think Claudia wears Louis down mentally and emotionally, And I think it has a lot to do with those 7 years after she did leave and she turned off her mind to him. And now he's stuck every night just walking the streets, like just speaking out into like the ether of Claudia, I love you. Claudia, I'm sorry. Claudia, come back. And he's doing this every night for 7 years. And so when she does finally come back and he has this connection, this mental, telepathy connection that he never could have with Lestat, I think Louis is like afraid to block her out now. Because like what happens if I decided to block her out and she left, I wasn't aware that she left, and now I really just don't know where she is for the rest of forever. And so to the point where it's like, if she's always in my head and always talking to me, I can always keep an eye on her and I know that she's here and hasn't left. And I'm like, that's a great disservice to Lestat. Whether you think he's genuine in like episode 6 about like really trying to work to like come back into the household and become a part of this vampire family, it hurts him so much because he's like, Louis, talk to me. That's all I want you to do. I want you to open up. I want you to talk to me. Please talk to me. And Louis weaponizes his silence and is like, I know it's the one thing you want. I'm not going to give it to you. And I'm not going to give it to you for like years at a time. But to Louis, Claudia can do no wrong for a lot of it. And he's quick to get on Lestat about things that Claudia can also get away with. So like he spends like the first 3 episodes getting on Lestat about how Lestat eats humans and how he doesn't like it and how it repulses him and he hates it. And why do you have to be like this, Lestat? And he's like, because I like it. And he's like, that's not good enough. Claudia comes along and she's like, I'm a child, I'm young, I do need to kill 2 people a day because I'm this baby vampire. And Louis is willing to be like, well, we've got to do what we've got to do for our new child. So I accept the fact that she eats people and I'm fine with that and I'm not going to get on to her about it. He's like, you don't have to kill the way that Lestat kills, but the fact that you kill is okay with me. I'm like, if he would have told that to Lestat at the beginning of episode 3, was like, you know what, you don't have to do it like I do it, but I'm okay with the way that you do it for you. A lot of this, I feel like we could have like
been
skipped a lot of
avoided.
trauma.
Right.
A lot of the trauma.
I want to talk more about like Daniel and how he is there basically to replace Claudia. And obviously he doesn't realize that, but there are so many hints that leads to that. In particular, when Amon says, you want to judge Claudia, but look in the mirror. And also how he kind of, how Louis, when he talks about Claudia to him, the camera always goes back to Daniel and Louis talking in the present day. And I think that him and Armand wants him to be a part of this. And it's like that, and the fact that he wants that to happen, I think he wanted there to be more of a connection through Claudia to him. And I also think that this whole interview is a pitch and it's a trap for Daniel.